With the addition of bolt charges this episode and the new aspects, it is a no-brainer that arc builds have completely eclipsed even that of Consecration Titan, and then there's Geomag stabilizers with Chaos Reach that is insane for super regen with the changes to Ionic Traces, but I wanted to set out to make a build revolving around Prismatic Warlock that can have the same versatility and power, or at least come close to that of many other top tier builds. So today we're going to go over a build that has insane ad clear and in-game content, great survivability, and the ability to use whichever super you want. So to start this off, we are going to be using Song of Flame to not only have great damage against a variety of enemies, but also an insane 90% reduction to incoming damage for the duration of our super. On top of that, we're going to pair this with Facet of Purpose to gain a restoration for 5 seconds each time we pick up an Orb of Power. If there wasn't already enough building into survivability, let's top it off with Lightning Surge Aspect, which allows our powered melee to not only jolt targets, stun overload champions, grant stacks of bolt charge when you hit targets, but it also provides a 15% reduction to incoming damage as well. And what's a fantastic build on Prismatic Warlock without Devour? So this is going to proc every time we defeat an enemy with an ability, improving health regen with each defeat, but also granting us grenade energy while doing so. You have a few standout options when you choose to pick a grenade. We decided to go with Cold Snap just because it has the ability to freeze unstoppable champions, which can stun them. It also can help stun overloads just by the first effect of chilling them, but it builds into your Darkness Transcendence meter. So since we're using an insane melee aspect in Lightning Surge, we're going to be using Arcane Needle to give us 3 powered melee charges. Having these 3 charges not only does great for ad clear, but it also means, hell, you can use one in a pinch to escape a bad situation. And when you pair this with an exotic class item, such as Spirit of Inmost Light, it's going to improve your ability regen when you're using your abilities. And even further, if you pair it with Synthoceps, you are going to have a huge increase to 165% extra to your melee damage when you're surrounded by 3 or more enemies, but also a 50% increase to your super damage when surrounded. This specific pairing will provide the most uptime for crazy gameplay loops, though it isn't necessary, so if you don't have it, do not worry. I would just focus on trying to get something with either Inmost Light or Synthoceps. I'd prefer Synthoceps if I had to pick one or the other. It is a fantastic option here. Anything else in the first slot with Synthoceps, you still will have an amazing build. Now, for our class ability, we're going with Phoenix Dive, solely because it has the shortest cooldown and it's extremely easy to proc. With having a constant loop of an extremely strong melee, the access to Prismatic, Constant Amplified, and Devour, on top of Restoration, coming from that Facet of Purpose, our next fragment is going to be Facet of Protection. This is going to gain an additional reduction to damage when we're surrounded, which will be amplified in our Transcendence, but this allows us to play a lot more aggressive. Our next fragment is going to be Facet of Dawn. Since we're going to be using a heavy melee build, it's going to make a lot of sense to toss on that fragment that gives us Radiant simply just by hitting a target with our Lightning Surge or our Arcane Needle. This will give us a 15% increase to damage with our weapons, but also it will give us anti-barrier capabilities. Since we're using Inmost Light, which feeds into our abilities heavily, we're throwing on Facet of Courage. It's an obvious pick here, stating that rapidly defeating targets with light damage will grant us melee energy. Also, defeating enemies with your grenade will grant darkness energy. We're here more for the light damage granting melee energy portion. The synergy here is unmatched, and it will ensure that you have a ridiculously high uptime for your Lightning Surge. And the last fragment that I decided to go with is Facet of Sacrifice. Since we're constantly going to either have Devour, Amplified, Restoration, or hell, even avoid Overshield, our ability Final Blows will grant bonus darkness energy, making it just that much easier to have a high uptime on Transcendence. But the best part about this setup is you don't need God roll weapons or even the best DPS loadout to make it work well. However, we did opt to go with arguably one of the best exotic primaries in the game, the Barrow Dyad. But I do want to point out in this footage, this is the base exotic. I literally got it from the quest, slapped it on, and made this build. So that means once we get it all upgraded, it is just going to make the build insanely better when we're using our primary. This thing's already nuts, and I can't wait to see what this build plays out when it's fully upgraded. Plus, exotic primary generates ammo bricks at a faster rate, and it being strand is going to allow us just that additional way to build into our darkness meter. And for this episode, we are able to pair it with unraveling orbs in the artifact to get unraveling rounds by either picking up a tangle or an orb of power. It's essentially the strand version of volatile. When you attack an enemy that is unraveled, it can cause thread links to burst out of the target and attack other nearby targets. Once hit, that target also becomes unraveled. So what we learn from this is that the unravel effect will spread to nearby enemies, unraveling further enemies, which then just creates a gameplay loop of unraveled enemies. Thanks for sticking through with that. And when you paired it with Horde Shuttle, you're able to spawn threadlings when damaging an unraveled target. So that's just an insane way for us to have a high uptime on debuffing targets, unraveling them, and then just continuing that spread similar to volatile. For the special weapon, I would recommend something that complements your playstyle. Some standout choices, especially this season, are trace rifles if you want to build into that artifact mod. Anything that's void, such as the area denial GL, the velocity baton, a void fusion rifle is also a standout pick, but I would recommend a rocket sidearm. Since we already have multiple ways to survive, you could go with Indebted Kindness, does roll with Volt Shot. You could go with the Airbent Action, which can roll with Heal Clip and Incandescent, which is a solid pick here. I did decide to go with the brand new Lotus Eater with Repulsor Brace and Stabilizing Rounds. I solely like Repulsor Brace because it helps us get that Void Overshield. But it's also going to help make enemies volatile, and having almost instant access to a Void Overshield on top of every other way to get restoration and any other type of survivability, it's going to make you feel so invincible. For the heavy slot, depending on the activity that you're doing, I'd recommend pairing it with a linear fusion and particle deconstruction if you want to build into a more high damage type of heavy, or either a void or a strand heavy machine gun. I did opt to go with the hammerhead here, and you can build into the void synergy if you do that. You could build into more strand synergy if you use a strand machine gun. Throw on an overload stun, it's a fantastic choice. Plus, having a high damage ad clear weapon that also has the ability to apply volatile and weaken is an S tier pick in my opinion. Now that this build, it does tie together beautifully with some standout armor mods. First up, you got to toss on the Void and Strand Siphon to create orbs, along with Hands On to gain extra super energy on our melee final blows. Then we opted to go with 3 heavy-handed mods on our gauntlets. This is basically going to give us almost no cooldown in creating orbs when we get kills with our Lightning Surge or our Arcane Needle, furthering your ability to have a high uptime on your restoration and also building into your super faster. Chest piece though, always go with a resistance mod that matches the activity you're playing. If you're playing more on level content, you can also toss on some reserve mods there. But with being able to generate tons of orbs from our weapons to our melees, we decided with the legs we want to build into that with recuperation to gain health on an orb pickup, invigoration to gain melees on an orb pickup, and then of course absolution to grant ability energy to all of our abilities on an orb pickup. Lastly, that classic item. Class exotic. You know what I'm talking about. Reaper is a top tier choice here due to the ability to create an orb when defeating an enemy after you use your Phoenix Dive. Then we've got Powerful Attraction, which will help pick those orbs up within 12 meters just by using your Phoenix Dive. Lastly, Outreach. This is going to further reduce our melee cooldown after we use our class ability. All in all, this build will allow you to conquer in-game content, whether it's a Grandmaster, Master Lost Sectors, dungeons, or raids. Any other type of seasonal content that you want to jump into, you will feel absolutely unstoppable with this build. Build. Down below is of course a dim link if you want to give it a go. And if you like this video, please consider leaving a comment down below, liking, or hell, even hitting that subscribe button for future Destiny 2 builds or content. And if you need a fire team, check out our Discord below or stop by our stream anytimes on Mondays, Fridays, and Saturdays. We're always playing with chat. But until then, I will catch you in the next one.